Have you ever had one of those mornings? The kind where the sun streams in, painting your kitchen in a warm, inviting glow, and you think to yourself, this is it. This is happiness. For Evelyn Reed, that morning started just like any other. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of toast, a symphony of domestic bliss. Her husband, Thomas, a man whose laughter filled rooms and whose presence felt like a comforting embrace, was humming a tuneless melody as he fumbled for his car keys. "Just heading out for groceries, Ev," he called out, his voice a familiar rumble that always put a smile on her face. "Need anything special?" Evelyn, a woman whose spirit radiated a quiet strength, despite the subtle lines that life had etched around her gentle eyes, simply smiled and shook her head. "Just get whatever you feel like, honey. And don't forget the extra dark chocolate, for my secret stash." Thomas chuckled, a sound that resonated deep within her, a sound she had cherished for 22 years. He blew her a kiss, a playful gesture they'd maintained since their courtship days, and then the familiar click of the front door. That was the last time Evelyn saw him. The hours that followed were a slow, agonizing descent into a chilling void. The milk had soured. The bread had gone stale. The chocolate, her secret stash, remained untouched. What began as a mild concern, a gentle flutter of worry, spiraled into a gnawing terror. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. The vibrant hum of their home, usually a beacon of warmth, became an echoing chamber of silence. The police, when they finally arrived, offered platitudes and promises of a thorough investigation. But their eyes held that familiar, weary pity reserved for those caught in the grip of the inexplicable. Thomas Reed, a man of routine, a creature of habit, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his morning coffee and the hollow ache in Evelyn's heart. This wasn't a story of a marital spat, a sudden flight of fancy, or a calculated departure. This was something far more sinister, far more perplexing. Thomas wasn't the type to simply disappear. He was grounded, dependable, the anchor to Evelyn's often stormy seas. Their life, outwardly, was a tapestry woven with threads of shared laughter, quiet understanding, and an unwavering commitment. They had built their home, raised their 2 children, Emily and Daniel, and navigated the ebb and flow of life's challenges with a quiet resilience. They were, by all accounts, the epitome of a stable, loving couple. But beneath that seemingly placid surface, a current, dark and insidious, had been slowly gathering strength. Evelyn, in the agonizing weeks and months that followed, found herself replaying every moment, every word, every glance, searching for a sign, a clue, a crack in the facade she had so readily believed. Had she missed something? A fleeting shadow in his eyes, a subtle shift in his demeanor, a hint of a life he kept hidden from her? The questions gnawed at her, eroding her sanity, chipping away at the foundation of her belief in their shared reality. Their home, once a sanctuary, became a mausoleum of memories. Thomas's worn armchair sat empty. His books on the bedside table gathered dust. His favorite mug remained unwashed in the sink, a cruel memento of that fateful morning. Emily, their elder daughter, a vibrant artist with a fiery spirit, retreated into herself, her canvases now depicting somber landscapes and tormented figures. Daniel, the younger, a quiet and introspective boy who idolized his father, became withdrawn, his bright eyes dulled by a grief he couldn't articulate. Evelyn, the matriarch, the one who was supposed to hold them all together, felt herself unraveling piece by agonizing piece. The police investigation yielded nothing. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no suspicious activity reported in their quiet suburban neighborhood. Thomas's car was found abandoned at a grocery store parking lot 3 towns over, meticulously locked, his wallet and phone still inside. It was as if he had simply stepped out of his vehicle and into thin air. The absurdity of it was almost unbearable. People didn't just vanish. Not without a reason. Not without a trace. Evelyn clung to the hope, a fragile, flickering flame in the encroaching darkness. She plastered flyers with Thomas's smiling face across town, haunted every soup kitchen, every homeless shelter, every forgotten corner of the city. She spent countless sleepless nights poring over missing persons databases, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through grainy photographs, each face a testament to another family's shattered dreams. She became a ghost in her own life, driven by an obsessive need to find answers, to pierce through the veil of uncertainty that shrouded her existence. The whispers began, insidious and cruel, like tendrils of smoke curling around her once respected name. Some murmured about a secret affair, a hidden life Thomas had been leading. Others hinted at financial troubles, a desperate escape from mounting debts. A few, the most malicious, even dared to suggest Evelyn herself was involved, her grief a carefully constructed performance. These whispers, though baseless, added another layer of torment to her already unbearable burden. She felt like a character in a Gothic novel, trapped in a narrative she didn't understand, her life twisted into a grotesque parody of what it once was. 15 years. A lifetime. 15 years passed in a blur of unanswered questions, false leads, and the crushing weight of a never-ending void. Emily and Daniel grew up, their childhoods marred by their father's absence, their mother's enduring sorrow. Evelyn, now a woman whose vibrant spirit had been dimmed by years of unrelenting grief, lived a life of quiet solitude, the memory of Thomas a constant companion, a ghost that walked beside her. She had never remarried, never even considered it. How could she, when a part of her soul was still tethered to a man who had simply vanished? Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, a phone call, a voice, hoarse and unfamiliar, on the other end. "Mrs. Reed?" The voice began, a tentative, almost hesitant query. Evelyn's heart, long since hardened by disappointment, gave a sudden, painful lurch. We believe we've found someone. A man who matches the description of Thomas Reed. He's in a hospital in a small town in Oregon. Oregon, 1,000 miles away. A place Thomas had never, to her knowledge, even visited. The absurdity of it was jarring. Yet a spark, a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of hope, ignited within her. Could it be? After all this time, her mind raced, a whirlwind of doubt and desperate optimism. Was this another cruel trick of fate? Another false dawn in her endless night? Or was this, finally, the beginning of an answer? The line of inquiry had gone cold so many years ago, and she had almost given up. The world had moved on, but Evelyn had remained frozen in time, waiting for Thomas. And now this call, pulling her back into the agonizing uncertainty. The journey to Oregon was a blur of frantic anxiety and an almost unbearable sense of disbelief. Evelyn, with Emily by her side, boarded the plane, her heart a drumbeat against her ribs. Daniel, now a young man studying abroad, would follow as soon as he could. The flight felt endless, each passing minute stretching into an eternity, filled with unspoken questions and the terrifying possibility of another crushing disappointment. The details from the hospital had been sparse, almost clinically detached. A man, disoriented and suffering from severe amnesia, had been found wandering near a remote hiking trail. His fingerprints, run through a national database on a whim by a diligent local officer, had shockingly matched those of Thomas Reed, a man declared missing 15 years prior. As they approached the small, nondescript hospital, Evelyn's hands were clammy, her breath shallow. This wasn't the reunion she had always envisioned, a joyful embrace, a torrent of explanations. This was a meeting shrouded in medical reports and the chilling reality of a lost memory. The doctor, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, met them in a sterile waiting room. "Mrs. Reed," she began, her voice soft, "the man we believe is your husband. He's been through a lot. He has no recollection of his past, his identity. It's a profound case of dissociative amnesia. We don't know what triggered it or why it lasted so long." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. Emily squeezed her hand, her own face pale with a mixture of fear and fragile hope. And then the door opened. He lay in the hospital bed, a shadow of the man she remembered. His hair, once a vibrant brown, was now streaked with gray. His face, thinner, bore the marks of time and hardship, lines etched around eyes that, despite their vacant look, held a faint, unsettling familiarity. But it was his hands, calloused and rough, that struck her first. These weren't the hands of Thomas, the meticulous accountant, the gentle gardener. These were the hands of a laborer, a man who had worked with his body, not with numbers. "Thomas," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. The man on the bed stirred, his eyes, devoid of recognition, slowly fixed on her. There was no flicker of understanding, no spark of remembrance, just a blank, almost childlike gaze. It was like looking at a stranger, yet a stranger who bore an uncanny resemblance to the ghost that had haunted her for 15 years. Emily gasped, a choked sound of anguish. "Dad?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The man's eyes shifted to her, a flicker of something, perhaps confusion, passing through them before they returned to their vacant stare. The initial joy of finding him was quickly overshadowed by a terrifying truth. The man in the bed was Thomas Reed, but he wasn't her Thomas. He was an empty vessel, a living testament to a lost past. The doctors explained the arduous process of rehabilitation, the slow, often fruitless, attempts to jog his memory. They spoke of triggers, of familiar scents or sounds that might awaken dormant pathways in his brain. But Evelyn knew with a chilling certainty that this would be no easy feat. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn and Emily stayed in a small motel, making daily pilgrimages to the hospital. They showed him old photographs, played his favorite music, recounted anecdotes from their shared life. There would be fleeting moments, a slight twitch of a muscle, a ghost of a smile, that would send a jolt of hope through Evelyn. But then, the blankness would return, extinguishing the flame. It was like trying to scoop water with a sieve. One afternoon, while Evelyn was reading aloud from one of Thomas's favorite books, a dog-eared copy of a classic adventure novel, his eyes suddenly widened. He pointed a trembling finger at a specific word on the page. "Orion," he rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "Orion." Evelyn froze. Orion. It was the name of a constellation, yes, but more importantly, it was the name of a small, obscure fishing village on the Oregon coast, a place they had visited once, fleetingly years ago on a whim during a road trip. A place she had almost forgotten. It was a minuscule detail, yet it felt like a seismic shift. This wasn't a random utterance. It was a connection, a thread, however thin, leading back to something. Excitement, mingled with a growing sense of dread, surged through her. Why Orion? Why that specific word? And why had Thomas never mentioned it before, not in all their years together? The memories of their brief visit were hazy, filled with picturesque lighthouses and salty air. Nothing ominous, nothing threatening. Driven by this new, tantalizing clue, Evelyn began to research Orion. The internet yielded little. A sleepy, unassuming town, known for its fishing industry and stunning coastal views. But then, a local online newspaper archive caught her eye. An article, dated 15 years ago, just weeks after Thomas disappeared, "Local fishermen lost at sea in tragic storm." The name mentioned was not Thomas, but a brief, almost dismissive line, caught her attention. Authorities are also investigating a mysterious, unidentifiable sailboat found abandoned near the coast a day after the storm. An unidentifiable sailboat. A storm. Thomas had no connection to sailing. He was a landlubber prone to seasickness. The pieces didn't fit. Yet, the timing was too precise to be a mere coincidence. A chilling possibility began to form in Evelyn's mind. What if Thomas hadn't simply vanished? What if he had been involved in something that led him to Orion, to that storm, to that sailboat? She showed the article to the doctor, her voice trembling with a renewed urgency. The doctor, though intrigued, remained cautious. "It's a long shot, Mrs. Reed. Amnesia is complex. But if there's a connection, it might be worth exploring." Evelyn knew it was more than a long shot. It was the only lead she had. She decided then and there, with a resolve that had been dormant for too long, that she would go to Orion. She would retrace Thomas's steps, find out what had happened, and reclaim the pieces of her husband's lost memory, no matter how painful the truth might be. Emily, though apprehensive, insisted on accompanying her. She too felt the pull of this unfolding mystery, a desperate need to understand the father she barely remembered. As they packed their bags, Evelyn's mind raced. The quiet, idyllic life she had known was now irrevocably shattered, replaced by a dark, unfolding narrative. The man she had loved, the man she had mourned, was not who she thought he was. He was a puzzle, a collection of fragmented memories and unsettling inconsistencies. And Evelyn, once a woman who craved stability, now found herself on the precipice of a dangerous journey, chasing a ghost, unearthing secrets that had lain buried for 15 years. The blankness in Thomas's eyes, the unfamiliar calluses on his hands, the cryptic utterance of Orion, all pointed to a story far more complex and terrifying than she could have ever imagined. The question wasn't just what had happened to Thomas, but who he had truly been, and what dark forces had been at play to keep him hidden for so long. The tranquil facade of their life had cracked, revealing a chilling abyss beneath. Orion, unlike the idyllic coastal town Evelyn remembered, felt heavy with an unspoken past. The salty air carried a whisper of secrets, and the quaint, colorful houses seemed to hold their breath, guarding untold stories. Evelyn and Emily arrived, a blend of hope and trepidation in their hearts. The hospital in Oregon had finally discharged Thomas, still a blank slate, and he was now with them, a silent, unsettling presence, a constant reminder of the fractured reality they were living. The doctors had suggested that being in a familiar environment, even one that was only vaguely familiar, might help stir his dormant memories. Their first stop in Orion was the small, weathered marina. The air hung thick with the scent of diesel and brine. Evelyn found the harbor master, a gruff, elderly man with a weather-beaten face named Silas, whose eyes held a profound weariness. When she mentioned the abandoned sailboat found 15 years ago, a flicker of something, a shadow, crossed his face. I remember that," Silas rasped, his gaze drifting out to the choppy waters. "Freak storm, came out of nowhere, took old man Peterson and his boat with it. That other one, never knew who it belonged to, just appeared, empty, torn up, a day later." He paused, narrowing his eyes at Evelyn. "Why do you ask, lady? That's ancient history around these parts." Evelyn, with a surge of desperate courage, pulled out a faded photo of Thomas. "Because I believe the man who owned that sailboat was my husband. He disappeared 15 years ago, the same week that boat was found. And now he's back, but with no memory." Silas stared at the photo, then at Thomas, who stood beside Evelyn, his gaze vacant. A slow, dawning horror spread across the old man's face. "The whispering siren," he muttered, almost to himself. "That's what they called that boat. It had a reputation. The whispering siren." The name sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. It sounded ominous, a harbinger of ill tidings. Silas, sensing her desperation, finally relented. "There was a man," he began, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial tone. "Came into town a few months before the storm. Quiet type, kept to himself. Rented that boat, the Siren. Paid cash. Never gave a name, just a shadow. But he fit your husband's description, all right. Similar build. That same quiet intensity in his eyes. This was it. The first tangible thread. Thomas had been in Orion, and he had been connected to a mysterious sailboat. But why? And what did it have to do with Man Peterson? Evelyn pressed Silas for more details, but he became evasive, his eyes darting nervously. "Some things are best left buried, ma'am. This town, it keeps its secrets." Undeterred, Evelyn turned her attention to the local records office. It was a dusty, forgotten place, overseen by a stern, bespectacled woman named Mrs. Henderson, who regarded them with suspicion. Evelyn requested records related to the abandoned sailboat and Man Peterson's disappearance. Mrs. Henderson reluctantly produced a file. The file, thin and brittle with age, contained newspaper clippings, police reports, and a single grainy photograph of the whispering siren. Its sails tattered, its hull scarred. But what truly sent a shockwave through Evelyn was a small, almost unnoticed detail. A faint, barely legible inscription on the boat's stern. Property of T.R. Not Thomas Reed, but T.R. It was a deliberate attempt to obscure the owner's identity. Then, a police report. It detailed the discovery of Peterson's body a week after the storm, entangled in fishing nets. The cause of death was officially ruled accidental drowning. But a handwritten note, scribbled in the margin by a local detective who had since retired, caught Evelyn's eye. Bruising inconsistent with accidental drowning. Possible struggle. Look into TR connection. Evelyn's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about Thomas's disappearance and amnesia. This was about murder. And Thomas, or TR, was somehow implicated. The idyllic life she had mourned was a lie. Her husband wasn't just a victim. He was potentially a perpetrator. Overwhelmed, Evelyn left the office, her mind reeling. Emily, who had been trying to engage Thomas in conversation, looked at her mother with concern. "Mom, what is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse, Emily?" Evelyn whispered, her voice raw. "I think I've found a killer." The implications were staggering. Thomas, the gentle, dependable Thomas, capable of such violence? It was inconceivable. Yet, the evidence, however circumstantial, was chilling. Evelyn knew she had to dig deeper, no matter how terrifying the truth might be. Her next stop was the home of the retired detective, a man named George Miller. He was an aging, solitary figure, living in a small, cluttered house filled with the ghosts of past cases. He remembered the Peterson case vividly. "Slippery one, that T.R.?" Miller rasped, his eyes gleaming with the fire of an unsolved mystery. "The local sheriff's office, they wanted to close the case quick. Said it was an accident. But Peterson, he was a tough old bird. And those bruises, they told a different story." Miller pulled out a dusty box, filled with old case files. "I kept my own notes," he said, tapping his temple. "Always trusted my gut. And my gut told me Peterson didn't just drown. He was silenced." He pointed to a faded photo of Peterson's body. There were indeed faint bruises on his neck and arms, easily missed by an inexperienced eye, or intentionally overlooked. "Peterson was involved in something big," Miller continued, his voice low. "He was sniffing around a smuggling operation. Something valuable coming in through Orion out on those fishing boats. And TR was involved. I just couldn't prove it. Smuggling. Murder. Thomas, a part of this dark world? It was too much to comprehend." But then Miller produced something else, a small, laminated newspaper clipping from a national paper, dated just a few months before Thomas disappeared. It was an article about a sophisticated art forgery ring, operating on the East Coast, known for their meticulous work and ruthless methods. The article mentioned a key figure, a financier who vanished just as the FBI was closing in. His name was Thomas Reynolds, but the description of his build, his quiet intensity, the way he carried himself, it matched Thomas Reed almost perfectly. Evelyn's world tilted on its axis. Thomas Reynolds. Thomas Reed. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying precision. Her husband, Thomas Reed, was not who he said he was. He was Thomas Reynolds, a wanted criminal, a participant in an art forgery ring, who had faked his own disappearance 15 years ago to escape the law, only to somehow end up in Orion, entangled in a smuggling operation and possibly a murder. The amnesia wasn't a random tragedy. It was a convenient reset, a way for him to escape his past yet again. The man lying in the hospital bed, the one with no memory, was not just Evelyn's lost husband. He was a phantom, a chameleon, a man with a hidden life far more complex and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The image of the loving, dependable husband shattered into a million pieces, replaced by the chilling portrait of a master manipulator, a man who had built a life on lies. The true climax wasn't the discovery of Thomas, or even his amnesia. It was the crushing realization that her entire marriage, her entire life with him, had been a meticulously crafted deception. The love, the laughter, The shared dreams. Had they all been fake? Had she been nothing more than an unwitting pawn in his elaborate charade? The emotional weight of this revelation was almost unbearable, a betrayal far deeper than his disappearance. She looked at Thomas, who sat silently beside her, his eyes still blank, and felt a cold fury mix with an agonizing sorrow. The man she thought she knew was a stranger, and the stranger was a ghost from a criminal past. The journey to Orion had not brought her husband back. It had exposed a horrifying truth, plunging her into a deeper abyss of uncertainty and pain. The crushing weight of the truth settled over Evelyn like a shroud. The man beside her, the one she had searched for with such desperate hope, was a phantom, a construct of deceit. The years of grief, the relentless pursuit, the agonizing longing, it all felt like a cruel cosmic joke. Emily, witnessing her mother's silent devastation, wrapped her arms around Evelyn, offering what little comfort she could. Thomas, oblivious, watched the waves crash against the shore, a blank canvas of a man. The next few days in Orion were a blur of cold, hard facts. Evelyn and Miller painstakingly pieced together Thomas Reynolds's, or TR, movements. He had arrived in Orion under an assumed name, using the Whispering Siren as a front for a new smuggling operation, likely a continuation of his previous criminal enterprises, now focused on stolen antiquities and art, judging by the clues Miller had uncovered. Peterson, the old fisherman, had stumbled upon the operation, perhaps unintentionally, and had paid the ultimate price. Thomas had silenced him, then staged the disappearance, leveraging the chaos of the storm and his existing knowledge of faking his own death. The amnesia, it now seemed, was a genuine consequence of head trauma sustained during the storm, a twisted, ironic twist of fate that had both saved him from prosecution and condemned Evelyn to a prolonged agony of uncertainty. The emotional toll on Evelyn was immense. Every shared memory, every tender moment, was now tainted by the knowledge of Thomas's deception. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the man she married, but the carefully constructed facade of a criminal. The love she had harbored for 15 years slowly curdled into a bitter resentment, mixed with an unsettling fascination for the depths of his deception. What was she to do? Turn him over to the authorities? The thought was unbearable. He was still the father of her children, the man she had loved, even if that love was built on a foundation of lies. But could she live with a killer, a master of deception, under her roof, even if he had no memory of his crimes? The dilemma tore at her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Evelyn sat on the porch of their rented cottage, watching Thomas. He was sketching in a small notebook, a habit he'd picked up in the hospital. His strokes were precise, almost obsessive. Suddenly, he looked up, his eyes, for the first time since their reunion, holding a flicker of something beyond blankness. He looked at her, truly saw her, and a single tear traced a path down his cheek. "Evelyn," he rasped, his voice raw with emotion. I don't know you, but I feel something. Connection. A deep, profound sadness. It was a breakthrough, however small. The amnesia hadn't erased everything. The ghost of the man she knew, the one capable of deep feeling, was still there, buried beneath layers of trauma and deceit. In that moment, Evelyn knew her decision. She couldn't turn him in. Not now. Not when a part of him, however small, was fighting its way back. She decided to give him a choice, a chance at redemption. She would present him with the truth, every agonizing detail of his past, the crimes he had committed, the lives he had shattered. And then, she would let him decide his own fate. It was a gamble, a desperate plea for justice, not through legal means, but through the terrifying crucible of self-awareness. The next morning, Evelyn sat Thomas down and, with a calm she didn't feel, recounted his story. The art forgery, the fake death, the move to Orion, the smuggling, the murder of Peterson. She showed him the evidence. The FBI reports, Miller's notes, the faded photo of the Whispering Siren with TR etched on its stern. Emily sat beside her, her face a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Thomas listened, his face a mask of disbelief, then horror. As Evelyn spoke, a torrent of fragmented images, muffled voices, and terrifying flashes of memory seemed to overwhelm him. He clutched his head, groaning, as if battling an internal storm. The blankness in his eyes was slowly replaced by a profound agony, a dawning realization of the monster he had been. He saw the face of Peterson, heard his cries, felt the cold spray of the ocean. He remembered the thrill of the con, the exhilaration of outsmarting the law, the chilling satisfaction of deception. When Evelyn finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Thomas, tears streaming down his face, looked at her, truly saw her, saw Emily, saw the years of pain he had inflicted. I remember, he whispered, his voice broken. All of it. God forgive me, Evelyn. What have I done? The confession, raw and unprompted, was the ultimate validation of Evelyn's agonizing journey. The truth, however brutal, was finally out. Thomas Reynolds, the criminal, was back. But so was a flicker of Thomas Reed, the man who had once loved her. The future remained uncertain. Thomas, now fully aware of his past, chose to surrender himself to the authorities. He confessed to the murder of Peterson and provided crucial information that led to the dismantling of the remnants of the smuggling ring and the recovery of several stolen artifacts. His amnesia, a genuine medical condition, was taken into account, but justice, in its slow, grinding way, would still be served. Evelyn's story is not one of a fairy tale ending. It's a testament to the enduring power of truth, however painful. She found her husband, only to discover he was a stranger, a criminal, a ghost. But in the end, by confronting the darkness, she brought a semblance of closure to her fractured life. The silence in her home was no longer an echoing void, but a quiet space for healing and rebuilding. The Reed family, forever marked by this ordeal, began the long process of mending. Emily and Daniel, though devastated by the revelations about their father, found a new understanding of their mother's strength and resilience. Evelyn, no longer haunted by unanswered questions, began to slowly reclaim her life, finding solace in her children and the quiet rhythms of her days. The ghost of Thomas Reed, the loving husband, would always linger, a bittersweet memory. But the monster, Thomas Reynolds, was finally held accountable. This story, friends, is a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't in the shadows, but in the people we think we know best. It's a story of love, loss, and the devastating power of secrets. If Evelyn's journey resonated with you, if you felt that chill down your spine, then do us a favor. Hit that like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the darkest corners of human experience. Until next time, stay curious and remember, some truths are better left undisturbed, or are they?